What up? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And look at you. You done stumbled upon little OTB Saints, where we bring you all the latest black and gold coverage.
Who are the Saints going to draft? Who's going to be their quarterback? What does the salary cap look like? All that information and more.
Hope you enjoy it. Like, subscribe. So Ross is host of Locked On Saints, obviously. And, this is anticipation season, right? Mm-hmm. This is where you do deep dives into the team, not just because you have to do daily content, but because once the season starts, it's a runaway train. And you're just trying to hold on and talk about all the millions of things that need to be talked about. This is where you can get nerdy with things. And yesterday's pod's probably a great example of that, where you explore who the Saints' most reliable weapon is on offense. And you do this by looking at route distribution, usage, all these sorts of metrics. Ross, maybe you could tease without spoiling or just give us the answer. What did you find in your nerdy research? Who will be the Saints' most reliable weapon next season?
Yeah, no, I don't mind giving the answer at all. For me, it's Chris Olave. I mean, the guy was remarkable last year, and I know that it's only been 1 year, but certain players, you only need 1 year to see him. This is a guy that on average had a success rate of over 75%, both against man and zone coverage, according to Reception Perception, who does some phenomenal research on, routes and all these other things that I use to kind of cross-reference my own charting and stuff like that. And, you look at some of the success rates and some of the things that he's been able to do. He wins against press coverage consistently and reliably. He wins against man coverage and zone coverages at a rate akin to guys like Stephon Diggs out there. So you're talking about some elite wide receiver separation ability, some elite wide receiver route running ability, all of these things. I mean, he just packs all of it. And then there's another metric that I love, which I think we use more in baseball than we use across other sports and things like that, because it's kind of like a pitcher metric almost, but it's called wins above replacement. Yeah. And so the idea is, what's the amount of wins that a team gets with this player on the field as opposed to a replacement level player, assuming that the team is otherwise a 3-14, 4-13 team. And Chris Olave is basically good for a win every 2 games by simply having him on the field. He was top 10 in that metric amongst over 190 different receivers that fell under that category. So an incredibly reliable player, and a player that when he's on the field, it's simply put, the Saints win games.
And so he's representative of a group where there's a couple of guys to look at here, and it's these second-year players, Ross. And there's a bit of a second-year zeitgeist going on in Baton Rouge right now with Kim Mulkey, Jay Johnson, winning natties. Everybody's talking about Brian Kelly. When it comes to the Saints, who do you think are going to – and obviously Chris Olave's are the number, as you just said, but who else do you believe is kind of poised to take a second-year leap?
Yeah, I think Rashid Shaheed, the other second-year wide receiver who was an undrafted free agent last year, he was an electrifying player, just didn't have a lot of opportunities last year, and for understandable reason. I mean, he was rehabbing, a collegiate injury when he first arrived in New Orleans that kind of sidelined him for things like mini camps and OTAs and things like that, which, we just watched with Derek Carr how important those are. They're installing in-game situations, red zone situations, in between the 20 situations, all that other stuff, which kind of sets that foundation upon which you build during training camp, which he also missed, a majority of. And then he was on the practice squad, didn't get called up until a certain point after Deontay Hardy's injury. So there just simply, he didn't have a command of the playbook because he didn't have a lot of exposure to the playbook. Now he has that. And I've spoken to Rashid a couple different times during mini camps and OTAs about how comfortable he's feeling with the playbook, and he's got it. I mean, this is not a guy that's, in 3 years going to be saying, I was out there, but I didn't really understand the playbook very well. I was still learning it. He's got it. And so he's in a situation now to where he's got 17 games ahead of him if he stays healthy to be the guy that we saw him be last year, which was this explosive player, but that could also attack all 3 levels of the field that you don't have to rely on to just be a field stretcher. So he's absolutely in that number for sure. Alontae Taylor, the second-year cornerback, that's another big one. They have the big position battle that we'll watch over the course of training camp between he and Paulson Adebo. So he may inherently have a step forward in year 2 just because of the role that he could potentially win. But we also know how remarkable he was. 12 forced incompletions last year, a 19% forced incompletion percentage, allowed only about a 48 or so, 46 percent completion percentage, drop, terrible QB metrics when targeting Alontae Taylor. So he was outstanding last year. And so I think an increased role would give him an opportunity there. And just to say the name real quick too, Trevor Penning, another guy that would naturally step into a larger role in 2023.
Ross, I want to go back to the receiver position. If it's the 1st game of the year, it's 11 personnel, like it, fully expected to be Olave, Thomas, and Shaheed if they're all healthy, correct? Because I know you have Traquan Smith and you have James Washington, you have Brian Edwards, who are veteran players.
Still have
but
Traquan Smith.
Are they just players that are fillers right now just in case something happens and you have another injury?
Wow.
Yeah, I do think that, that depth at wide receiver is going to be. Oh, sorry, I must have cut you out a little bit, but no, I do think that the depth at wide receiver is important for them, because you're right, it is the big three, and then who's the guy that you go to behind that? Right. Not even just in terms of injury. It's also, what do you do when you want to go to a four wide receiver set, or you just want to mix in another player for a different personnel group or something like that. So I think Brian Edwards is a guy to watch in that role as a potential wide receiver 4, if you will. I think the chemistry that he has with Derek Carr is huge, but he's also got a lot of positional versatility. Back in 2021, the last season that he played with Derek Carr, took a lot of snaps out wide, took a lot of snaps on the interior, playing in the slot and things like that. He ran about 99, around 100 different go routes, but then exceeded 30 reps at about 4 or 5 different routes as well. So good command of the route tree, good understanding of the offense. And that was a similar offense at the time in Las Vegas than what the New Orleans Saints would be running this year. So you can kind of see where the natural fit there would be. The interesting thing, though, is that you come out in 11 personnel, you've got 3 wide receivers, and you've got Chris Olave, you've got Michael Thomas, you got Rashid Shaheed, but who lines up where? Who's in the slot? Who's on the outside? That's where, if you're the New Orleans Saints, you get to have a lot of fun. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Chris Olave lined up at the X, Rashid Shaheed lined up at the Z, which puts them in sort of the outside roles, with Rashid Shaheed a little bit off the line of scrimmage, so he doesn't have to deal with the press coverage as much. And especially knowing how good Chris Olave has been against press coverage, you can put him right up on the line of scrimmage, and then utilize Michael Thomas in the slot, because the Saints had a big time percentage drop off of slot distribution for Michael Thomas last year as compared to some of his best years. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit more, around 25% or so slot distribution for Michael Thomas in 2023.
Wow, just amazing black and gold takes right there, Jake.
I don't think I've ever heard any takes that are better than the 2 guys that just gave you that take.
And you can keep getting them by going ahead and liking, subscribing, ringing the bell to get notifications when we post. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next OTB Saints.